Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am Kris Gardner of the Houston Roundball Review. Welcome to an edition of Folks Talking Sports. And looks like it worked. So I'm solo for a few moments. Life has interceded for a few of us. It's how it is here a couple of days before Christmas. One colleague, Willy Gibson, is under the weather with, I think he said, sinus headache. James Mueller was in the airport trying to get to his destination with his family. Flight delays, baggage claim delays. So he probably won't be able to make it with us this evening. Andy Yanez hopefully will join in a few minutes. He's taking care of some work. And Chris Baldwin is slated to join at 7:30 at the bottom of the hour. So I'm going to fly solo for a bit here, for a few more minutes until Andy and Chris join. But as always, and I think it worked, I tried. Folks Talking Sports is streaming on the YouTube channel of Houston Roundball Review, on Facebook, and this evening, for the first time, on the Folks Talking Sports Twitter account. So trying something different there, branching out for folks to talk, to reach different audiences. So because different people follow us on different platforms. And a quick story, just want to say this, courtesy of Chris Baldwin, told us that one of the Sassers, Marcus Sasser's dad, watches Folks Talking Sports. Well, we knew that because he tweeted to us a few times about a month ago, roughly, that Mr. Sasser gets a lot of his information about U of H via FTS. But at Saturday's game in Fort Worth at Dickies Arena, Chris Baldwin was there for the U of H Oklahoma State game. And Mr. Sasser came up to Chris and said, I saw you on Folks Talking Sports. So how cool is that? So yes, we do have an audience. Audience is growing. And like I said, for the first time, the show hopefully is streaming on the Folks Talk Sports Twitter account, because that's what it is, Folks Talk Sports. The show is Folks Talking Sports. But yes, if you are watching us on Twitter, give a shout out there, and hopefully Andy will be able to do his magic on there and add some work on later on, spicing segments and things like that to the Twitter account. But it's a new era as we close out 2021. I'm doing it solo right now. Like I said a few moments ago, Willy Gibson is under the weather. Sinuses, it's nothing COVID related. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but maybe you can tell. I'm getting over a cold. So I'm kind of stuffed up. So I'm getting through that as well. So such is life. Fortunately, it's not COVID. So hey, I'm thankful for that. I did a good deed a few days ago in the rain, changing the flat tire, and I wasn't really dressed for it. So that kind of caught up with me. So, but that's all right. Going to talk. The plan was to talk some football in tonight's show. U of H Cougars football team against Auburn Tigers on December 28th. So I'm going to get into that. And since I'm solo right now, as you can see, the show is Folks Talking Sports is sponsored by the Saxenian family. Steve Saxenian, bless him for his support of Folks Talking Sports, as well as the Houston Roundball Review. He's done it for a few years now, and hopefully he'll continue doing that going forward. But this segment, this Houston Cougars segment, is made possible by the Saxenian family. 11 a.m., Tuesday morning, December 28th. The 11-2 Houston Cougars football team faces the 6-6 Auburn Tigers in the Birmingham Bowl. The Cougs have appeared in 14 bowl games in the last 17 seasons, 2005 to present. That's a mark that ranks second among programs in Texas, the Aggies, at 15. Well, the Aggies are not playing in the Gator Bowl, so I guess that streak will end. The Cougs' 89 victories since 2011 also rank second among FBS schools in Texas, behind the Aggies' 92 victories. Houston has not faced an SEC program since Halloween 2015, when it shut out Vanderbilt 34-0 at TD-ECU Stadium. Since 1999, the Cougs are 5-4 against the SEC, including wins against LSU in 99, Mississippi State in 2003, 2005, and 2009, and of course Vanderbilt in 2015. Houston is making its 28th bowl appearance. The Cougs' record is 11-15-1 in those bowl games, and they've dropped the last 4. My man has joined me, Andy Yanez. We're going to talk about that right there. Andy, I didn't realize that, man, that the football team has lost the last 4 bowl games, 4 bowl appearances.
Yeah, I think the last time they won was the Peach Bowl against Florida State, 2015.
Yeah. And lo and behold, man, who would have thought that game ended Florida State's reign right there? That was the end of the Seminoles' reign.
It was the end of the Seminoles' reign, and it was the peak of Houston at the same time.
It sure was, man. Who would have thought that? New Year's Eve, 2015. Everybody was hyped. U of H fans, alums were hyped. I had friends go to the game in Atlanta for the Peach Bowl. Great things were on the horizon. Well,
it all fell apart.
Things changed after that. But for the Florida State Seminoles, things cratered after that. U of H won that game 38-24 and really clearly was a better team. Fans can say, well, we didn't really take that game seriously. Not what that was U of H's fault. So Houston dominated that game, won by 14, and probably could have won by even more than that. But my man, Mr. Yanez.
Oh, I was going to ask, did Jameis Winston play in that game, or was it?
I don't know.
Was it after?
No,
because that was 2015. No, he was he drafted 2015 or 2014? I can't remember.
Maybe, but he was done. I'm not sure who was the quarterback there, but I know it wasn't Jameis. No, it was not him. So, am I correct, my man? Is the show streaming on Twitter?
It is. I saw it right now. I checked it out, and luckily I was able to join a few minutes earlier. I thought I was going to be a little bit later, so it works. It looks perfect.
Outstanding. So, Mr. Sasser has another way to watch folks talking sports, man. So, how cool is that, man? And
that's awesome. That looks real good, by the way, just on the timeline.
So, yeah. So, Chris Ball want to join, and Chris will talk some football. I don't know if you heard me earlier when I was solo for a few minutes. Willy Gibson is sick with sinuses, and James was that he had planned to arrive at the airport, arrive at his destination from the airport. Flight got delayed. Baggage claim is late. So James won't be able to make it here with us this evening either. So that goes another football angle for the Cougs. So I'm going to rely on you and Chris to carry the load about football. But let me read some more info about Auburn, 6-6. And let me ask you, man, are you going to the game?
The bowl game?
Yeah.
I will not. I will be at Fertitta Center for the conference opener.
And that's where I'll be, of course. But hey, man, you can hop on your jet, man. The football game's at 11.
On my jet? Ha!
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Actually, they're putting together. I don't think the attendance for University of Houston is going to be high for that bowl game. Just my my sense on it, but I know that they're putting together some really good packages for students. I think they offered a $40 package that would have included like a travel, essentially a travel package. I think the bus leaves from UH at like 5 a.m. that day. They travel all the way to Birmingham. Obviously, they cover the game expense, the tickets, and then I think they take them back that same day. And I think they had another package where they actually stayed overnight. So, I mean, it's certainly going to take its toll, but honestly, it's pretty good value for like 40, or I think it might even be cheaper for the day trip. So, they have some packages, but I doubt it'll be. And they got a brutal time too, 11 a.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah, on a Tuesday, yeah, it's not ideal. And you mentioned that, which I didn't know about, but the Alumni Association is having a reception in Birmingham at a spot, kitchen and bar, and also a tailgate, $40 for the tailgate as well, at a cantina in Birmingham. So we'll see. I'm kind of curious how many people do show up, student-wise, alums. I mean, the bowl game, 11 o'clock. The opponent probably doesn't want to be there either. We can talk about Marcus Jones deciding to forego, not playing the bowl game and get ready for the NFL. I'm not surprised. What were your thoughts on that when he made the decision?
No, I wasn't surprised either. It was something that we talked on in our podcast. Dayon and I did. But honestly, it makes sense. I mean, at the end of the day, there's not much more Marcus Jones has left to prove to put on, for for college specific game tape, I mean, he's done it all, especially this past season where he literally played every position for Houston, offense, defense, special teams. He was phenomenal in all aspects, really. I think he might have scored a touchdown in all phases. I think he had a rushing touchdown on offense. I don't remember if he might have returned a pick six or something like that. But yeah, at this point, there's nothing more he can do to help his stock. And I wasn't surprised by it. I think it's the smart decision, especially with the turnaround. I'm pretty sure he's going to play in the Senior Bowl in a few weeks. So I think he made the best decision for himself.
So just a little bit on inside info on the series, U of H football versus Auburn. Auburn leads the all-time series 5-1. Tuesday's game will mark the first matchup between the two teams since 1973.
Yeah,
you were nowhere around. I was 1 year old and some change.
Wow.
So, wow. Two of Houston's longest plays in program history came against Auburn. Joe Lepaski's 82-yard punt return touchdown happened September 21st, 1963. Is the second longest punt return in U of H program history. And Paul Sweeten's 89-yard interception return touchdown happened October 26, 1957. Is the sixth longest interception return all time. Here's a stat. I doubt this will happen Tuesday, but Houston held Auburn to 1 rushing yard in the 1969 Bluebonnet Bowl, the fewest allowed by the Cougs in bowl history. Cougs won that game 36-7 on New Year's Eve, 1969. And that game was the lone bowl matchup between the two teams. J-Rod Sniper, what's up? We're talking football. So are the Rockets at halftime of the Pacers? I'll be talking Rockets on Sunday. 56-51 Pacers. Jalen Green's his first start in about a month. 4 for 6 from 3. 0 for 2 from 2. But he's fitting in nicely. 12 points in the game for the Rockets. Christian Wood with 15 points. Halftime, Indiana, 63, Rockets 58. A little bit I saw before getting on here. The Rockets defense was awful. They've really gone backwards defensively the last few games. I'm not sure what the reason is for that, but they got to correct that. But I got you here, man. We're gonna have class. A few moments with some slides. I got one about the U of H. It was a little different this time. But I want to talk about this. Because as far as I know, Michael Resco and the AAC have not changed yet. But changed the policy regarding forfeiting because of COVID-19 and not having enough players, student athletes, student assets to compete in basketball. Well, let's see. As of yesterday, the ACC, the Big East, the Big West, Mountain West, and the SEC all announced changes or modifications to their COVID-19 rescheduling policy. And the press releases were almost cookie cutter. So here we go. Basically, I'll read this, and it's pretty much the same thing for these 5 conferences so far. The decision, the Atlantic Coast Conference announced Wednesday that it has modified its 2021-22 COVID-19 rescheduling policy. The decision was unanimously supported. Probably, all that kind of stuff. They're not going to say anything different. If possible, games that cannot be played as scheduled will be rescheduled. If a game cannot be played and cannot be rescheduled, it will be considered a no contest. Beforehand, it was a forfeit. The irony is, I'm going to the Big East info because Big East they have really changed their tune because in men's basketball, they had 4 games that were forfeited. But the Big East said, no, we're going to backtrack on that. So let me go here. The Big East Conference announced a modification to its game cancellation policy for men's and women's hoops. Under the modified policy, a conference game will be canceled in the event a school has fewer than 7 scholarship players and 1 countable coach available for a game. the Big East Conference office will attempt to reschedule any such games in accordance with parameters approved by Big East directors of athletics. In the event the rescheduling parameters cannot be fulfilled, the canceled game will be designated as a no contest. To date, 4 Big East men's conference games had been designated as forfeitures under the previous COVID-19 game cancellation policy. The forfeiture classification will be removed from these games, and efforts are now underway to reschedule them at a later date. No women's games to date have been designated as forfeitures. Mike Oresco has said, as of yesterday, and I think today, because I haven't seen anything today, they're sticking with it. If a team does not have enough players, it's a forfeit. Andy, come on, man. He's got to change that. He's got to change that. There's just no way in the world he have more and more conferences announcing modifications to their policy that Mike Oresco is going to stick to his guns, despite most of the teams. The reason for this modification is because of Omicron. Almost every school and the players are vaccinated, and players are trickling in getting the booster. But Omicron, the variant, has changed things. So if that's changed things, the AAC should change things too. I mean, can you imagine Memphis, Wichita State, Houston, Cincinnati having to forfeit games because they don't have enough players, rather than just declaring a no contest and rescheduling later on? Come on. What do you think?
No, yeah, I absolutely agree. And like you said, a lot of it has to do with Omicron. It's completely changed the kind of, I wouldn't say landscape, but kind of the way that it's kind of put in a different perspective of where the pandemic is. I know when those rules first were put in place, it kind of served more as an incentive to get teams to get their players to get vaccinated and get that vaccination rate up high. And in theory, in practice, what I'd envision a lot of these conferences were hoping would have happened is if they can get enough players vaccinated where they don't have to worry about what has happened with COVID running rampant throughout the country. Now that it seems like this Omicron variant, it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated. Even, I mean, I think even if you're boosted, there's still a lot of people testing positive for the Omicron now. There's speculation whether it's less severe, or not to get too much into the weeds of whatever the variant is doing. But I think this is what Kelvin Sampson said during his availability earlier in the week. It's an evolving process, and you got to change with whatever happens with the virus. And it certainly has changed the past month, especially here in the United States and the sports world. I mean, kind of crazy when you think about how many players in the NBA, NFL, even the NHL, who I think they paused after Tuesday with their contest, where it's spreading rapidly. Now,
Right.
you got to, and if that it kind of imagine the microcosm of in the sports world, how many people and just regular people must be spreading it throughout the country. So it's certainly something where it should be reevaluated, especially if you have like a school. Yeah, Kelvin Sampson, for example, he said that his team is 100% vaccinated, and he said that all his players will have their booster shots by January 1st.
Yep.
If you still have players testing positive, I mean, at that point, it's not really much anything different Houston could have done. It's the virus that keeps mutating, and you have to update those policies as the science keeps changing.
And as the science keeps changing, Commissioner Resco, he's got to be changing this. He has to. I just, he's not a dumb man. You and I have accused him of being stubborn, sticking with Power 6.
He is.
for that label, he's been pushing that for forever now. He shouldn't be stubborn on this. Modify the policy, declare games a no contest, and just try to reschedule at some point during the season. And then if it can't be rescheduled, then you can declare no contest, because it won't impact the teams for the tournament selection committee. The committee has already said that if a team is unable to play because of COVID, it'll be a no contest in their eyes, and it'll be like the game never happened. So it won't be a forfeit as far as the committee is concerned. So, the issue like the Memphis-Tennessee game on Saturday that was canceled, because Memphis did not have enough healthy players. The committee would look at that as basically Memphis scheduled Tennessee, so they'll get some consideration. Well, at least they schedule tough non-conference. Other than that, game never happened. So beyond that, that's where that goes. Going to lean into this. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's interesting because you look at the college football playoff. I think they released their kind of COVID-19 policies literally just yesterday, and they went through a whole bunch of scenarios where it's possible based on the guidelines they sent out yesterday, where this year could or 2022 there could be no decision for a national championship in college football, depending on the COVID situation. I know Alabama had news yesterday as well. I think they had Bill O'Brien and a couple of other coaches test positive for the virus. So what a story that would be if for whatever reason Alabama can't field the team, and you have in a perfect world if Cincinnati does have enough players, they would be able to advance to the finals based on the forfeitures, or if for whatever reason the championship game comes and both teams can't field the team, then it's just declared a no contest. I think it's certainly a sign of just how quickly things have changed, and really in a matter of weeks.
It's a sign of where we are, but the cynic in me says, come on now. If Alabama doesn't have enough players, some way, somehow, well, we could
find a way to
reschedule the
postpone
game.
it. Yeah,
let's postpone it for how many guys do they need? How many days? Okay, about 4 days. We'll push it back. Yeah.
No chance they let Cincinnati go.
So, I mean, because Alabama, Coach Saban, I think the players have been vaccinated and almost, are getting booster shots. And I think Michigan doing the same thing. Haven't heard anything about Cincinnati, but I think Coach Fickle will as well. I'm not sure about all that. Don't want to toss it out there. But yeah, the CFP committee said if you don't have enough players, it could be declared a forfeiture. Wow. For college football playoff, for a team advances because their opponent doesn't have enough healthy players. Okay.
Sign of the times.
I believe it when it happens. But yeah, the sign of the times, and that's where we are. That would be a real crappy way to advance. And you could say, well, it was their fault for not doing their part, getting all that kind of stuff. But
that's the point.
But
you're at a point now. Yeah, you're at a point where you could be boosted and you still get the virus. And I mean, what more else could you have done? It just goes back why we feel like the American Athletic Conference should change their policies, especially if you have like a team with a 90% vaccine rate and they're still testing positive. I mean, there's a point where you can't really blame the players. It's just something that's out of their control, to be honest.
Terry, thank you as well. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Andy, Terry's in New Zealand, man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas from the other side of the world.
So yeah, he participates in the Rockets. Let's Talk Rockets.
I guess he's already it's Christmas Eve for him already.
So yeah,
other side of the world. So Merry Christmas Eve.
So like I said, man, Houston Roundball Review, local name, global perspective. So there's more proof of it right there. But yep, reminder, Rocket fans, our next hour, you and me, Rocket fans, we'll be having the next Let's Talk Houston Rockets will be Sunday, December 26th at, I think I said 8 p.m. Central, to talk about that. After today's game, Rockets will be off for a few days, thank goodness, because I need a break as well. Man, let's talk about U of H men's basketball. The banged up U of H men's basketball team is 11-2. Injured. Tremont Mark had successful shoulder surgery Wednesday. He'll be out for the rest of the season. Tasia Moore sick. Hasn't played in the last 2 games for sure. 2 or 3 games.
I think it's been about a week, yeah.
So hopefully he'll be able to play in the conference opener on Tuesday versus Cincinnati. Kyler Edwards sprained his ankle Wednesday against Texas State. Marcus Sasser has turf toe and ankle sprain. Juwan Roberts had a nasty fall against Oklahoma State, banged his hip. And you can see him dealing with that in the game against Texas State. Reggie Chaney is playing through pain basically do a busted knuckle on his left hand. Ramon Walker is back from surgery on his hand and a detached tendon on his right hand, shooting hand. Jamal Shead sprained his right ankle because Kyler did his left ankle. Jamal did his right ankle early in the game Wednesday. And they're 11-2. If they could stay healthy.
Both of those losses came down to the last possession too, where they had the ball in the last possession. They had a chance to run out the court with a win. And one of them, if you ask, at least after the moment, Houston thought that they should have won. So it's impressive what they've been able to do. But if you're kind of for the superstition folks, I think Houston's been kind of cursed this season. It's like almost every game there's something that comes up, because even last night, Jamal Shead, first 90 seconds of the game, tweaks his ankle as well. He was able to come back, but I mean, it's absurd. You look at their bench. I mean, there's a point where there's only, I think they had Ryan Elvin and Robbie Armbruster and a couple of other players that are suited up, but Kelvin Sampson's not going to go to them down the stretch. In a perfect world, there's going to be a point where I think he said earlier in the week where he has 5 players. You only need 5 players to play, but there might be a point where they only have 5. He'll be looking like the women's basketball team a couple of seasons ago when they had all the injuries and red shirts. Man, that's absurd.
It's just right now one of those seasons where injuries have hit the team. Hopefully it won't last, because, and give me your thoughts on this. With Josh Carlton in the post, he's their best low post scoring threat, I think, since Coach Sampson took over the program.
Yeah.
His presence, he commands double teams.
I agree. Yeah.
And if teams double him, Josh can just kick it out to Marcus Sasser, Kyler Edwards, Fabian White.
Ramon Walker showed that he has a
Ramon Walker finally knocked down 3. Jamal Shead is up to 40% from 3. And then you got Marcus Sasser, who has a shake and bake to his game. Jamal Shead has played very well so far. He still had some moments where foul trouble, bad fouls. But this team has pieces, has potential. They just got to get healthy. And if they can get healthy, who knows what could happen. But I'm not sure if they'll ever get healthy and stay healthy. But Josh Carlton feasted last night, 20 points, and probably could add more, if Coach Sampson wanted to. But this team is balanced inside, outside, and the one constant, that defense is just rock solid.
For sure. I think it's hard to call this a silver lining, because it's both good and bad. But if you look at or at least the majority of the injuries, it's not something that, most of the players have been able to play through it. Now, that's good that they're on the court, but the other thing is, is this something that they have to deal with it throughout the entire season, and it won't get better until the end of the season? That's going to be something that's going to be interesting, and I'm sure they're happy they're going to have these 6 days off between last night, the non-conference finale, and next Tuesday when they have to host Cincinnati in the conference opener. But it's ridiculous. Kelvin Sampson said he hasn't been able to fully practice, and what he said feels like a long time where he hasn't felt where the team has been able to get better through practice. They don't have the bodies available to practice.
Yep, can't go 5-on-5. They're off today, Christmas Eve. They'll have practice Christmas night, I think 6 o'clock, something like that. So no games between, now and the 28th. Kind of rest the aches and pains. Marcus Sasser doesn't really practice. Rest his turf toe. Maybe does like a little walk through the day before. Juwan Roberts probably is not practicing. I'm kind of curious if Kyler Edwards was able to, because Coach Sampson mentioned that some of the guys were going to drive home, who live within the state.
Mm-hmm.
With Kyler's ankle injury, sprain, would it be okay to drive?
Prevent them.
Go back to the DFW area. So I don't know about, that. So it's just one of those things right now. And like I said, Ramon Mark is out for the season, but Ramon Walker is filling his spot. Two different kind of players. Tremont is more of a facilitator. Ramon is a shooter and fine knock down threes. And I think as his hand heals more, I think his outside shot will fall more on a consistent basis. I think Ramon's bigger. He looks bigger than Tremont Mark. Ramon likes to take charges. Apparently, he's bought into the culture quickly. And I'm happy to say Tremont and Ramon, the last two winners of the Gavi Lewis Award. I'm on the committee to do that. Hopefully, if anybody on the committee is watching, I'm going to start prodding y'all. It's time for us to put our list together, a watch list for 2022 award. So get ready for that. I'm going to start sticking y'all come Monday. We've got to get a list ready and put that out there. But yeah, Ramon Walker's playing well. And Coach Sam said a great line. And I think last night's post-game press conference, people talked about, Coach, why don't you trust Ramon? And Coach said, I need to have Ramon needs to show me that I can trust him. That's right. Ramon has to show Coach Sampson and the staff that he does enough to warrant staying on the court. Just don't want to throw him out there and he has no clue what to do. But Ramon has shown he's playing good defense, good rotations. He's smart. Knock down a catch and shoot three. So U of H, they could be 9 deep once they're healthy. Get Tazi Moore back. Ramon Walker could fill in that rotation. The issue is, and I guess it's going to be Tazi Moore, is who would be the point guard when Jamal Shead and Marcus Sasser have to sit for rest or foul trouble. Who would it be? Who do you think it would be?
Right, that's a tough question. You probably. That's a real tough question.
Exactly.
You have to go guards. I guess I would say Kyler Edwards, but that's not really his strength. His strength is getting open and shooting the ball. So if I would have to pick right now, I'd have to slide him over to that position. Maybe even Tajay Moore does it when he's fully healthy. But yeah, that's a good question. That's certainly going to be a tough question, especially if they find themselves in that position.
I think it would be Tajay Moore. And once they get the ball into the front court, the offense can still run. As long as teams don't press them and do all those kind of things, the lack of a backup point guard should not be too much of an issue. I think Tajay can dribble it up across half court because he can penetrate and break down defenses. He's a willing passer, so that's a plus. Ramon, it's not his game. It's not really Kyler's game. So it might have to be Tajay by default because, it's not Fabian. It's not Juwan. It's not Josh. It's not Reggie. It's not Robbie Armbruster. It's not Ryan Elvin.
Yeah.
So, because really last night, the game was a blowout. But once Coach Sampson brought in Ryan Elvin, Javier Francis, Robbie Armbruster, Jamal Shead stayed on the floor because Kyler was hurt. They didn't have another point guard. They didn't have another guard to run offense. So, and it's got, I guess you want to have everybody bubble wrapped because you don't want anybody else to get hurt. So that could be an issue. I don't want to put it out there, being a pessimist, but just to plan ahead of what if, who would be that other person to bring up the ball. And conference play is about to start. Teams are going to scout better. You see most of these teams in conference twice, so they might look at you a little differently. So it'll be a challenge, but let's have class, Andy. Let's have some class.
Mm-hmm.
Class is in session. All right. Let's start with U of H men's hoops. If you've been busy all day doing, community impact newspaper stuff or Slama Jama stuff, the U of H men's team is now 4th in the net. They went from 5-4 as of today games through yesterday, December 22nd. I'm going to pull up the net rankings for the opponents, UVH's opponents thus far, and I got it divided up into quad 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to do for the women's side. And I knew this, but it didn't really hit me until I was putting it together today. Women's basketball doesn't have quads. They don't have quadrants. They just have net groupings. 1 on 25, 26 to 50, 51 to 100, and then 101 up. So they don't have a quadrant breakdown. I wonder if they'll evolve into that like the fellas. And here he is, Kris Baldwin. Kris Baldwin is ready for class. Kris Baldwin. Kris came to join. Because he wanted to talk some more net ranking stuff about men's basketball.
Of course.
Kris, how you doing?
Can't get enough. Good. How are you guys?
Doing great. Okay, we're going to do this real quick and then come back to you to talk football about the matchup between the Cougs and Auburn on December 28th at 11 o'clock in the morning. Are you going, Kris?
I'm not going.
Okay. 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay. All right. Here we go with class. All right, fellas, y'all can see. Let me start from the beginning. Okay. Everybody read that? Did I do a good enough job there?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay. You see the net rankings. This is the quad 1 for U of H men's team. The only two losses U of H has. Alabama 24 net, and these net rankings are as of December 22nd, so through yesterday's games. So you see that Wisconsin as a 30 net. Look at the 4 other games there, all conference games. 51 UCF, 56 Cincinnati, 59 Memphis, Wichita State 64. So those all count right now as quad 1s based on either the location of the game. So the Cougs men's team still has chances to get some quad 1 victories, which is, I think, kind of important because they don't have, it's not the Big 12. It's not a power conference, so you're not going to have a whole bunch of chances to get Q1 victories. But there are 4 of them right there for U of H. Thoughts on that? Just look at this first slide.
Well, I guess the main thing that pops out is that both of those losses were Q1 losses. Like I said earlier, I think it says something that both of those losses came down to the last possession where Houston had a chance to either tie it or walk off and win it at the very last possession of the game.
Kris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, U of H is going to have to keep winning it and not have many stumbles in conference if it wants the type of seed it obviously is shooting for and is sort of built around trying to get. There's not that many with the way the conference is this year. There's not that many. You can't really stumble that much.
Yeah, and just imagine that what Kris said is correct, but wait till you see on the women's side. Oh boy, it's eye-opening. But here's quad 2. 3-0 so far. So they got 5 more games, and those 5 were conference games. And notice how the quad is broken down in the ranking in terms of home versus away. So they have 5 more chances currently for Q2 victories. And good old Hofstra's Coach Sampson looked good on that one. Their net ranking continues to improve. I think once they beat, Arkansas, Hofstra went from around 99 to 80, now to 71. So that is a positive for U of H. Oregon is not. Get to quad 3. Virginia is not. But just what you see right there, what are your thoughts, Kris?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely, if you look, because the net is also their offensive and defensive efficiency, I think that's going to help them. They're going to be high. They should be high in both continuing, throughout the season. So that will boost her. But yeah, even, Alabama's recent stumbles, that doesn't help them.
Right.
When you look at, what the committee looks at, and Virginia obviously isn't as good as they thought they would be when they scheduled that game originally. So there are some obstacles.
Yeah, because Davidson went into Alabama and beat Alabama, and U of H didn't. So as Andy said, I think Alabama has not been the same since they beat U of H. They got waxed at Memphis. They lose to Davidson. And I think both of those were double-digit losses. Right, Andy?
I don't remember if the Memphis game was a double. Let me double check real quick. But no, yeah, I agree. With what I said, like, I don't know if you could directly correlate. And yeah, it was a 14-point loss to the Tigers. Really, it came on the tail end of when Memphis seemed to be kind of tail spilling. Their season was kind of stumbling a lot after I think they were like in the midst of their losing streak. So, but I don't know if you can directly correlate it to the Houston game. Maybe it just drained Alabama, but they certainly have been struggling a little bit since they beat Houston a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think definitely that first Memphis game. I would say that Alabama Houston game was such high intensity and so physical that I think it took out something out of both teams for their next game. Houston was able to win. They didn't play as high quality of an opponent. But I will say, I do think Alabama's going to rebound and, start looking more like itself, just the talent it has. I don't think it's going to continue on its current trajectory.
Agreed. And because Alabama's in the SEC, they have many more chances to get quality wins, which should help U of H also. Q3, Virginia is at a 113. Who would have thought that? Nobody at Virginia would have thought that.
Yeah.
But there it is. And, Cougs 3-0, quad 3, 5 more games remaining, all conference games. Temple twice, Tulsa, Tulane. Clearly, U of H cannot stumble. I mean, they can, but it would hurt their ranking to lose to Temple, Tulsa, or Tulane, even if it is on the road. Andy?
Yeah, no, what Kris said earlier, where they don't even have that many opportunities to get those quote-unquote quality wins. I mean, even looking at the Q2 rankings, I think there was a couple of those schools that were kind of teetering on that edge of becoming a falling to a Q3 net ranked team too. So I think, yeah, like you said, Virginia and Butler were probably two opponents to the Houston envisioned being much higher in that scale when they first scheduled the contest before the season even began. I think SMU too, especially not looking at the bigger picture with the American Athletic Conference as a whole, they hope that they can string together a couple of games where they can kind of rise up in the net. But yeah, it's kind of tricky because obviously, of course, Calvin Thompson said it yesterday. It's going to be hard to be perfect every game in the season. They have 18 conference games left before the regular season ends. To be perfect through it all, it'll hurt them if they have a slip up just because of they don't have the opportunities to have as many Q1 and even Q2 games.
Which is another benefit of the move to the Big 12.
Yeah,
right.
Won't have issues like this in the Big 12. Go ahead, Kris.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting that like we're worrying about this will be this year and maybe next year will be the last 2 years they have to worry about the opponents they're playing, because then they'll have these highly ranked opponents throughout the year and it won't be an issue. But.
And wrap it up with Q4. 4 more conference games: ECU, Tulane, and South Florida. South Florida, I guess at some point they'll be good again. I'm not sure when it's going to be, but won't be before U of H leaves, apparently. But there you go. So that's it. I'm gonna shift gears because I want to get Kris's thoughts on the health of the men's team and their football. But let me pull up U of H women. Guys, the first part is real quick. One game against the top Baylor, lost. And Kris, women's side does not have a quadrant stuff divided in quadrants. No Q1, no Q2, nothing like that. Right as of right now. Maybe going forward in the future seasons, they'll do that. So it's just 1 to 25, 26 to 50. But because of South Florida and UCF, U of H women, they have 4 chances to get wins over top 50 in the net opponents. So that's a plus. That's a good thing. They need to win at least 2 of those 4. At least. Now, 51 to 100. Look at that. Only got 2 left. Realize where I am, guys. 2 games AAC, then 4 here. That's a total of 6. 1 to 100. They have, look at this, 101 and higher. This is the first. This is just 101 and 127. 6 conference games. Next, they have 4 more, 151 and up. So 10 conference games. The net ranking of the opponent is 101 and up. So they truly cannot afford to lose probably any of those games. And they have 1 remaining game against Southeastern Louisiana with a net ranking of 243. So 11 games left. They can't afford to lose any of those games. This is another benefit for U of H women's basketball to go to the Big 12, because you're not going to have this many teams in conference play with such awful net rankings in women's hoops. Look at that. Just thoughts on that real quick, and Kris, we're going to talk some men's basketball and football.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be hard for them to, make the tournament without having a long run in the conference tournament already. And so I think it's more about how they're playing for them at the end of the year than it even is. I mean, obviously you want to get some of these higher, beat some of these higher ranked teams in your conference. But I think for them, I mean, unfortunately, it's almost already set up that it has to be about how they're playing at the end of the year.
Andy?
No, absolutely, I agree. It's a tough road. And so many of those 101 plus teams, opponents that they have left. Kind of going back to what I said with the men, it's hard to be 100% on point game in and game out, and they have 1 slip up. It's I mean, already they're in an uphill battle. Something we talked last night, where really they probably have to beat both UCF and USF at least once to have a chance to put a resume, and even then they have to remain perfect with all these 100 and plus net ranked opponents. So it's certainly going to be, honestly, a real tough challenge. And like Kris said, really their best chance of making the NCAA tournament would be just to win the American Athletic Conference tournament outright, which is going to be a difficult challenge in itself, because you still have those 2 heavyweights in UCF and USF, and even then they still have to compete against the likes of Tulane and those teams. So it's certainly going to be a difficult challenge.
So go ahead, Kris.
Oh, I think it's a point where they're still almost, trying to establish their culture, for lack of a better word, Kelvin Sampson's favorite word. And this season is still more about that, I think. And, then maybe you're, pushing for next year, the year before you go to the Big 12, that you're going to be on, much more solid ground.
All right. Kris is new to this, Andy. We might have to break it down for him, our thoughts on the women's basketball program. Because let me see if I can pull it up real quick and not lose you guys. Coach Huey is 95 and 127 overall at U of H.
Spanning how many seasons?
This is his 8th season. They have yet to get to the NCAA tournament. They were close. They were the first in the first 4 last year. I think we all agree they do need to win the conference championship to get the automatic berth to the tournament. So it's an uphill road for them. They've played better. They beat, our last show, they won at Florida State. So they win over an ACC school. But The stumbles thus far this non-conference hurt them. The lack of other quality opponents remaining hurts them. So USF, UCF are probably 1-2 in the conference. So there's a chance, based on how the U of H finishes in the regular season in the conference standings, they may have to beat both of those schools again in the conference tournament to get to the NCAA tournament. So it's a daunting task for Coach Huey and the players. Not saying it can't be done. So we'll see how it goes with some, good luck on it. They're 7-5. Their net ranking is 69. That's third in the conference right now, 69, behind South Florida and UCF. But they don't have a lot of great chances to get, great wins the rest of the season. So they're going to have to beat USF, South Florida, and UCF at least once during conference play, and then do it again in the conference tournament. All that without losing, without having a bad loss in conference play. That's hard to do. Human nature, you might stub your toe once or twice because it's hard to go perfect. Even for great teams. And this team is not a great team. Let's be clear on that. Mr. Baldwin, sir. I'm going to get your thoughts on the banged up U of H men's team. Do you think this is just one of those years where they're going to be snake bitten the whole season? Or once they get healthy, January, that they'll be able to stay healthy for the rest of the season?
Well, I mean, I think, anytime you lose someone like, Tremont for the year, who, arguably might be their most, naturally talented player, most natural skill. It affects your, your floor and your ceiling, as far as what you can do that year. It doesn't mean you can't recalibrate and sort of like they did last year, when they lost, Caleb Mills to a transfer. It doesn't mean you kind of come out of that and have a strong season. But I'm not necessarily ready to say this year is just going to be, all to injuries. Because if you look at the other, Marcus's toe, that should get better, as he gets rest as the season goes on. It seems like they're really, they are very, resting him in practice a lot. So I'm not, Juwan, his ankles are probably going to bother him, most of the year. But they seem to be, using his minutes in the, with the rotation and having Fabian and, Josh Carlton, who's really emerged in the last, 4 or 5 games, really helps him on the front line. So I'm not ready to, write it off as this is just going to be one of those injuries years, but it's definitely going to be a factor, I think.
Yeah, Chris, let me get your thoughts on this, because with Josh Carlton down low, the potential for this team to go far in the tournament, I think is there if they can stay healthy, because they have an inside and outside game.
For sure. I think this is, the first time in a while, maybe even since Kelvin's been here, that they're potentially this strong inside as far as offensively. They've had, some really good defensive centers, rebounding. But Josh, he does give them a different dimension. They can play through him on offense, which they haven't been able to really do with a lot of centers. They can pass inside out. So he can be a major factor and a big time player for them. I think, his importance has only increased, now that you lose someone like Tremont and you've had, other guys who are banged up and dealing with issues.
Ask you, Chris, and then Andy, we'll talk football. Who is behind Jamal Shedd? Who is the backup point guard?
It's a good question. I would say, they're probably going to stagger, so you want him or Marcus on the floor at, most of the time, because Marcus can obviously, play point as well. So I think there's some of that involved that, you probably are going to, rest them at different times and try to have one of them out there when you can. And, then you're just going to have to see, sort of what develops. Ramon has, shown some flashes, almost more, sparked, defensively and, taking charges in the last few games. But he's shown flashes, with hitting a few threes, and he does have an offensive game, and, he's sort of, still coming back from his injury as well. So we'll see how he develops as the season goes on. But, I'm interested in what you guys think, who the backup will be as well.
I think it's going to be Taze Moore. In the sense, because he can facilitate. He can break down a defense, and he's willing to pass. Nobody else is like Jamal. Nobody else is like Jamal as a true point guard. That old school term. Marcus can run the offense, but I think Taze can, when needed, he can do it. Almost in a pinch. Wouldn't want him to do it for 10 minutes, a stretch. But it's got to be really by committee, because that's where Tremont Mark being out for the rest of the year, his absence would be felt the most. He's at the backup point guard, that facilitator to rest Marcus and Jamal. Andy?
No, like I said, I agree with Taze Moore, but then also, I guess out of force of if the need arises, you'd have to kind of slide in Kyler Edwards in there, and like you said, Chris, to at least get into the front court or into the front court where they can run their offense and go from there, and then they could kind of be more flexible. And I'd imagine they're probably going to start assuming they can get everyone healthy. If that does arise, they'll kind of change a little bit how they play and start feeding more with playing through Fabian White and Josh Carlson, like you saw last night. Sampson said that was the game plan to attack Texas State. So, but that's a good question, because like we saw from Chris and from we struggled. I mean, it you have to think about it. It's not a clear-cut answer once Jamal Shead and Marcus Sasser. Once you get past them, it's not a clear answer.
Yeah, I do think you bring up a good point. Kyler can do some playmaking and ball handling if they need it. You don't want him to be the 100% primary point guard, but yeah, I think there's still more there that he can bring to this team that I think he hasn't shown as much yet.
Let's talk football real quick. Rockets lead the Pacers early in the fourth quarter, 94-91. Chris, Cougs football, Auburn. Give me your thoughts on the matchup.
Well, I think it's good. It's good for them to be playing an SEC team. It should have them, motivated into the game prep, and it's a good opportunity to sort of build for next year, which I think mostly when you're in these kind of bowl games that aren't the the Big Six are what these bowl games are about. It's more about next year. I do think Auburn's going to be a tough opponent. They're going to want to end their year strong. That they got to build for next year. The SEC is you don't want to show any weakness, and another loss in a bowl game would not go well for Auburn.
If Auburn lost to UVA, they would end the season 6-7, under 500. So that might be a motivating factor, because right now they're 6-6. Looking at pregame stuff, they rank 7th. I'm gonna do this and then get your thoughts on this about Marcus Jones. But Auburn ranks 7th nationally in block punts, 3, 12th in defensive touchdowns with 3, 14th in tackles for loss, averaging 7.2, 24th in kickoff return defense, 18.33, and 25th in punt return defense, only giving up 4.12 yards per game. With Marcus Jones opting for the NFL, preparing for the draft, who assumes that all those roles, all those hats that Marcus, wore for the Cougs, and how big of a loss will it hurt the football team?
I'll go for it. I guess you kind of slide in Nathaniel Dell to have punt return, kick return duties. I think the way it kind of changes the way Houston plays, or at least it favors Auburn, is they don't really have to worry about. Um, well, they do have to worry about Nathaniel Dell because he's an explosive player, but I don't think you'll see the point where Auburn is kicking away complete like on kickoffs. You would have teams kicking the completely opposite way for Marcus Jones just so he doesn't have a chance to return, whether it was kicks or punts. So I think they could kind of take it easy on that, at least in the beginning, and kind of force Nathaniel Dell or whoever's back there returning kicks to show them that they have that same explosiveness. But I think that's really where it'll be impact, where really it's not like kind of the advantage that a lot of teams started giving Houston at the end of the season was that they were playing kickoffs completely different. That's something that'll go away with Marcus Jones not playing.
Yeah, I think it's gonna hurt them in the secondary almost more. And on defense, he's just such a key part. I don't think you can blame, there any blame at all for Marcus Jones for making that decision. He gave them everything he had all season. He played hurt. So I think you have to just if you're U of H, you have to just wish him the best, and thanks for everything you did for the 2 years you were there. But I think it is gonna impact them almost more on defense. I think Nathaniel Dell, as Andy said, can do a good enough job on kicking punt returns with their blocking that he can still be a threat for sure. He's not going to be Marcus Jones that can take a kickoff and win a game in the last seconds likely, but that's where I think it's really could hurt them.
Does Marcus, his decision to prepare for the NFL, change your thoughts on how you're going to pick the game?
Probably not. I mean, and not to give it away if we're going to do it later, but I was gonna. I'm leaning towards Auburn anyways, but just because how the matchups are. But yeah, it's definitely you could say it's another factor for sure.
Andy, does it change how you were leaning?
No, I agree with Kris, where already it kind of felt like Houston was not to use the word disadvantage, but it would have been an uphill battle to have to beat Auburn, and it's just another thing going against them. And like Kris mentioned, certainly on defense, the impact will be felt, especially with what Auburn has shown in the past. And Auburn is one of those teams where they've showed that they have multiple ways of winning, like in that Alabama game where like it was a tough, hard-fought defensive battle. Then also it's an SEC team going up against, I know the American Athletic Conference UH dominated with their sack avenue and what they were able to accomplish, but it's a whole different ball game having to go against an SEC offense. So Auburn's going to have a good chance to put up a lot of points in that bowl game. So like Kris said, that'll certainly be a factor, but final outcome, I don't think so.
Auburn's coming into the game on a 4-game losing streak. Of course, that's
SEC schedule.
Yeah. They have the second toughest schedule this season in D1 football. I'm picking Auburn. I'd like for U of H to win the game as an alum. Football team finish on a high note, finish 12-2 rather than 11-3 and on a 2-game losing streak. But we'll see.
No, I was going to say it's interesting that the line, last I checked, it's actually kind of not changed too much, but it has moved towards Houston a little bit more now. Auburn's only favored by 2.5 points than the 3-point favorites there were about a week ago.
Kris, as we wind it down here, I want to get your thoughts on the possibility of the Division I football champion being determined because of COVID.
Yeah, obviously you hope it doesn't happen. It's just it's just a crazy time. I know they've set out the rules now that what they're gonna do. If one of the teams can't play in the semifinals, and then if one can't play in the championship game, I'd still be surprised if those teams don't find a way to play, even if they're missing a player or two. So I think it's going to be decided on the field, but I mean, you can never say anything for certainty these days. We've learned that the last 2 years for sure.
And get your take on this also. Do you think the American Athletic Conference, i.e., Mike Oresco, will modify their COVID cancellation / forfeiture rules like other conferences have done this week, rather than simply declaring if a basketball team doesn't have enough healthy student athletes to play, calling it a forfeit? Conferences this week have decided to change that and declared it a no contest, and then hopefully reschedule it later on in the season. Do you think they'll change that, modify it?
I think they will. I mean, it's just the way it's going, and no one wants to, I guess if some, programs would be fine winning by forfeit, but no one really wants to win by, forfeit even. You want to be able to play the games, that, these guys are on college because they want to be able to show off their skills and, play the games. I think they're going to, common sense would say that you should modify that policy. And I think they'll fall in line with the other conferences that are doing it.
All right, let's wrap it up. Kris, you first. How can people find you on social media?
Oh, you can, well, social media is just, I'm much on Twitter at Kris Y Baldwin, and then papercitymag.com is where you can read all my stuff. I want to do my thing again this week where I say, like, if Houston, Roundball review, you can, see, you can just get so many press conference on stuff. I go to a lot of things, but there's stuff I miss, and you'll find it all up there. And, Andy does he wrote a story today. He's like a big time real news reporter now, but he's also doing sports on the side still. So, and he's always on Twitter, breaking stuff or reporting on things. So these two guys, yeah. If you're a sports fan, it's a good way to stay involved for sure.
Appreciate that, Kris. Andy, how can folks find you, man?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter, like scrolling down at the bottom of the screen at Yanez_5. Be sure, like Kris mentioned, had an article today. I've been able to enjoy a couple of weeks of PTO for my daytime journalism job. So get to enjoy, go back to Fertitta Center and really focus on men's basketball. And Kris said, you break news too. You broke the Dejan Jarreau news last night too, that he was going to be signing with the Mavericks. So if you're a UH fan, really follows, of course, Joseph Duarte from the Chronicles on top of this stuff too, and James Mueller, who's also become the unofficial fourth host for us. Give him a follow as well, but also be sure to check out Pawd Slama Jama. That's PAWD Slama Jama for Dayon and I and a couple of other co-hosts. Covering UH athletics, beat mainly men's, women's, and football. So give us a follow.
Yeah, I just want to say there's so many good sources now to sort of get good UH stories and info, which is, I think encouraging to see, because I came from Michigan State and I saw how like that, major programs were covered. And when I first came to Houston, it didn't seem the, same way, but I think there's been a definite difference. And, Kris has been there from the very beginning, but, seeing more and more in the last few years from other outlets.
Agreed. The coverage has grown, and that's good to see. So, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I think all of us will be at Fertitta Center on. Well, Kris, will you be there Tuesday?
Yeah, I think I should be there Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay, so all three of us will be at Fertitta for the conference opener for Houston and Cincinnati. 7 p.m. on ESPN2. I think that's right. So we'll see who is healthy for U of H. We'll be there. Well, let me do it. I don't know if the other two guys will do it before I close out, but I got to do it. It's kind of tradition. Real quick update. Rockets are now behind Indiana, 104-97. 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Andy, do you want to guarantee U of H Auburn bowl prediction?
Yeah, for sure. Hit it. I guarantee.
Guarantee.
Auburn's going to cover the spread. 2.5, especially if it stays at 2.5. I see them winning by over. I'll take the over on that.
Kris?
I think Auburn's gonna win, but I'm not ready to. I just think college athletics are too unpredictable. Maybe I just need more time to get used to the guarantee thing. But Clayton Tune could have a great game, and you never know who's going to rise to the occasion or who's motivated or not in these kind of bowl situations.
That's a true point. What if Auburn doesn't care? What if they're just like, it's the bowl game we don't want to be in. So that's
a great point. Honestly, it could be an opportunity for Clayton Tune to kind of shake off the two bad games. Obviously the Texas Tech home opener where complete collapse in the second half, and even against Cincinnati, and Bearcats did a good job of limiting the Houston offense once the third quarter hit. So it might be a motivated Clayton Tune to put together a full complete game against one of these top tier opponents.
That's a good point. Despite all that, I'm still Andy. I'm doing it too. I guarantee Auburn's going to win the game at least by 6. Spreads 2.5, 3. I think they'll cover that in the win. So thank you very much. We're going to close it out. I'm Kris Gardner of Houston Roundball Review. Thank you for people on Twitter at our Folks Talk Sports Twitter account for watching the show. Something new for us. Look for more of that in 2022. You can catch the show on Facebook and YouTube and now Twitter. So we're broadening the audience. So as always, Chris Baldwin, thank you very much. And Yanez, thank you very much. I'll see you guys December 28th at Fertitta Center for the basketball game. Go to the website, HoustonRoundballReview.com, as well as Houston Roundball Review on YouTube for videos and interviews and all those great things. And I've lined up the board man. I'll be talking to Justin Gorham in January. We're aiming for the 3rd, January 3rd. Talk to him again to see how he's doing so far overseas. I talked to him, I think, in November. His season had just started. So we'll get a little update from Justin about how things are going. So look for that on the YouTube channel in, 10 days or so. So, guys, thank you very much. And see you on the 28th. Y'all take care.
Exciting. Happy holidays, everybody.
You too. Happy holidays, guys.